Hello, everyone, and welcome again to Elevating Your Life. Oh my goodness, I am elevated today. I am so happy to share with you a fantastic guest who I had the honor of sharing on my show several years ago. And he's just got some amazing, wonderful messages for everyone today. We have with us today Rob Leonetti. He is a certified trauma recovery practitioner, coach, and owner of Hope Bridge Collective, a resiliency and empowerment mental health and wellness organization. Rob believes that trauma is a very normal part of being human, and that sometimes people just need a guide to help navigate and manage their unique experiences. As a complex trauma survivor with over 25 years of research in the lasting effects of trauma, Rob supports his clients as a voice of experience using his trauma informed, compassionate lens to attune and help them regulate and reconnect with their authentic selves to slowly and safely reemerge more healthy and aligned with their truth to live a life they love. Oh, Rob, this is just so exciting. This is so wonderful. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, Paula, thank you so much. It's so amazing to see you again, and I'm so thrilled to have this opportunity to get together. Thank you so very, very much.
Oh, me too. Me too. Well, I would love it if you'd like to share some more of your background and what drew you to become the amazing coach that you are now.
Oh, well, thank you so much for giving me the opportunity. Well, I think from last we spoke, which was a few years ago, something kind of happened in between that, something that kind of rocked the world. So one of the great things I think about being human is that we have the opportunity to learn, grow, and evolve. And that's exactly what I've been doing. And the interesting fact is that society has been learning and evolving too, both around the same subject, which is near and dear to me, which is mental health and wellness. And what I mean to say, since our show together, we had a little something called the COVID-19 pandemic, which changed the world in so many ways. And one of those ways was to bring mental health challenges that millions were facing kind of out of the shadows. And that was a good thing, not the mental health challenges, but to help normalize that conversation. And some of those statistics that came out of that time were amazingly eye-opening. May I share a couple of them with you?
Yes. Yes, please.
So, in the first year of the pandemic, anxiety and depression increased globally by a massive 45%. And one in four people experience mental health issues. That's roughly a billion people, according to the World Health Organization. And then Boston College reported Americans' anxiety increased by 65% and depression by 61%. And that was 7 times higher than the year before the pandemic. And according to the CNN poll, 90% of the US adults believe that the country is facing a mental health crisis, and a staggering 12 billion working days are lost to depression and anxiety every year, costing the economy and companies over $1 trillion in lost productivity. Amazing statistics. Out of those, the three most common mental health diagnoses are anxiety disorders, depression, and PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorders. And one, again, to relate to the pandemic and the normalization of the conversation, these challenges are equal opportunity to all humans, regardless of wealth or stature. Celebrities and sports figures came out of the woodwork and to share their personal stories about mental health and traumatic life events. Ryan Reynolds, The Rock, Selena Gomez, Prince Harry, Simone Biles, Michael Phelps, and the list goes on and on. Now, their courage and transparency have definitely helped with the social stigma, Paula, but there's still so much misinformation. And well, let's face it, The average person doesn't have the resources of the famous to get the help that they need, and supply uh, far outpaces demand far outpaces supply. So most times, unless a person confides in us, we don't even know they're experiencing an underlying challenge with their mental health because these injuries don't look like broken bones or cuts that bleed. These wounds are invisible and left untreated can make a person feel broken and hopeless and, very, very alone. And
Yeah.
then one aspect of mental health challenges that's sometimes not really mentioned is how it affects the complete person, meaning the mind-body connection is very, very real because our brain controls all the functions of our biology, and a dysregulated brain will eventually make our body pay the price. And take it from one who knows. I think maybe I had mentioned earlier in one of our talks a long time ago that my story is an origin story of that complete person having challenges. If I could remind your audience a little
Yes.
bit about what
Hear that.
drew me to
Yes.
this subject and this very worthwhile cause. So it started with losing my father of a massive heart attack when I was only 3 years old. That hole still remains in me. I don't know how it couldn't with anybody. But my mother had eventually remarried who she thought was a decent guy, but would turn out to be a very mentally and physically abusive person. And even as a little kid, I would not be spared. So after years of anxiety and depression from abuse, I actually suffered a mental health crisis at a very early age. I was only 11, and I began just kind of wandering through life as a spectator to myself, robbed of my identity because of this traumatic, very long experience that continued. So I myself was feeling very ashamed, not knowing how to process this. I was a little kid. My brain kept on racing with thoughts that didn't serve me. And in the years to follow, I became very, very analytical. I just kept thinking, like, what's wrong with me? And the shame took over. And I dove into research on behavior and science. And I was doing anything to try to fix myself because I had nowhere else to turn. And then as a young adult, I had a string of unsatisfying jobs. But then I got a break as a technologist in a biotech company, and I was working with scientists. And with all the research I had done on the human condition, I was speaking to them about my theories. Of course, I was masking who the subject was. I was kind of like doing the old asking for a friend because that was my MO, right? I would never ever say it was me I was asking about. So I was also so desperate for anything positive in my life that I found inspiration and comfort in the study of spirituality and philosophy. And then tinkering with my life became my hobby. And in my search for answers, I kept always kept a very open mind where any possibility could come from. I didn't care where it came from, science, spirit, you name it, any subject, as long as it spoke to me and it made sense, I was all about it. A good idea doesn't care where it comes from. If it makes sense, it makes sense. But I was still suffering from a brain steeped in trauma. And after all those years, my body began to break. One morning, I was alone in my home office, and then it happened. I clenched my chest in agonizing pain and thought, oh my God, my father died alone of a heart attack. Was this what was destined for me too? I called 911 and I got rushed to the ER, and I began a 24-month physical and mental hell on earth, Paula. The mysterious symptoms began to erupt and my health unraveled. And by my third trip to the ER, the doctors did a cardiac catheterization and found my heart's left main artery, which is affectionately known as the Widowmaker, was 95% blocked. I could have easily died at any point from this blockage, but I guess life had other plans for me. I had my stents and then I left the hospital. The problem was, unlike other people who get stents and feel amazingly better instantly, I still felt terrible. And for the next year and a half, I would be seen by every clinician imaginable to diagnose the constant chest pains that came from the center of my chest and spread in all directions. But that wasn't the worst of it. These pains would always be accompanied by panic attacks, and I could barely live my life anymore. I had had enough after so much time. I used all my years of scientific research and all the information you could find on the internet, and I dedicated myself to finding an answer because no one else could help me. And in time, I began recognizing a potential source of this meltdown I was having. My symptoms matched a malfunctioning nerve of all things called the vagus, which is a cranial nerve from the back of your skull that goes around all your vital organs, including your heart, your lungs, your gut, and it controls all of them unconsciously. It's part of your autonomic nervous system. It just does it. I knew I was onto something when I began studying what's called polyvagal theory, which involves the vagus nerve, and then it all clicked. I asked a sympathetic doctor for a class of antidepressants that were prescribed for vagus nerve hypersensitivity, and ever so slowly, I began to feel some relief. My symptoms calmed enough that I was able to incorporate mindfulness and meditation into my recovery and regained finally some semblance of emotional regulation and control of my life. So even after seeing 20 clinicians in 8 specialties over 2 years, Paula, and almost dying, it was me who found the answer. The lesson here is that you cannot heal the body without healing the mind. And years of stress, anxiety, and depression will destroy a person's biology. Do you know that? Do you know that? Here's a little fun fact. Years of stress has an exact equal negative effect on your heart's health as decades of smoking.
Oh my,
Stress is absolutely the silent killer. And heart disease and heart attack are still the number one killer of people. So after this hell on earth, I began a new chapter in my life and felt a deep responsibility to share my story as a cautionary tale, basically, to benefit others. And that's when you and I met those years ago. And now my focus is trauma recovery. Um,
and now
and that's what
you're
I'd love
here
to
for
talk to you about.
others to assist them in making those steps to improving
Yeah,
their lives. Oh, Rob, that is so amazing and so beautiful that you are doing that.
because trauma, I think trauma is just, it's a very broad word, and it actually comes from the Greek word meaning wound or hurt. And it's a psychological wound, basically. It's left behind after a distressing or disturbing event that makes you feel unsafe. It's not the injury that happens, it's what's left for you to deal with after the injury. Now, it's a part of life. Everyone has it, and it's always been there, and it always will be. But today's world is a breeding ground for it. You know, you just turn on the TV, the epidemic of hate, divisiveness, and intolerance is worse than ever. And with all the media showing all the global conflicts and horror out there, we're barraged with it every day. You can't get away from it. And so then trauma creates a world where we feel overwhelmed and powerless and unsafe. And by its very nature, trauma is the great disconnector. It causes us to separate from our bodies and our emotions. Trauma is a very personal experience, and no two interpretations or reactions are ever the same. And it really does. impact a survivor's capacity to be in a relationship with themselves and others. And without the healthy relationships that we see and that are modeled from our parents and our families, or maybe not so healthy, we don't have the skills to build relationships in adulthood. And that could lead to self-abandonment, where we turn on ourselves and see our needs as unworthy. And because we crave the love and belonging, we abandon our authentic self and our own values, hopes, and dreams. And we try to become whatever we feel someone else might want us to be just to earn the love that we so desperately need. I mean, I was a chameleon. I would turn into whatever somebody wanted me to because I didn't know who I was, and I would do whatever it took to get friendship and relationships and encouragement and just that safe feeling of a friend. And so for many trauma survivors, part of the recovery is shedding those identities and reconnecting with yourself. It could lead to trauma could lead to toxic shame and limiting beliefs and adaptive coping mechanisms like addiction and eating disorders and self-harm. It's just terrible the downstream effects, what it could do.
And
Now, mm,
I'm thinking, Rob, that, as we meet someone or people around us, everyone, I mean, there are so many avenues of trauma that can be in someone's life that others don't realize they're going through. And
it's
they're,
a 100%. So that's so insightful, Paula. That's why I think you really have to, when dealing with folks, you really have to take the high road and choose kindness first, because everyone's fighting a battle you don't know about. I mean, look, we put the 10% publicly facing personas of ourselves out there. We don't want people to see the 90% behind the curtain that we're dealing with. Nobody shows that on their sleeve. So I always try my best to choose kindness even when it's difficult, because usually people lash out and are unkind because they're fighting their own battles that make them feel sad and insecure, and it's very normal to lash out when you have that kind of burden upon you. It's
yes.
really
And
yeah,
so,
kindness first always.
yeah, so what you're offering everyone now, so wonderful, Rob, is to learn how to get back from that separating and take the
Mm.
steps to come back to themselves and get that positive in their life. So what would like a first few steps be for someone?
Yeah, so let me so this is eye-opening to me. So let me take a quick step back and explain what trauma recovery coaching is, because I'm sure a lot of people don't realize what that is or it's even a thing. So let me paint a picture. And before I do, I want to emphasize, just like trauma, finding help for yourself is not a one size fits all. As a trauma survivor who's tried everything to find relief, I want to talk about my insight and personal experience, so people know that there are choices out there of healing modalities besides the traditional, and that survivors can find what works for them, or even choose a combination of approaches, which is not so unusual to have therapy and coaching. It's very typical. So safe connection is the core. It's literally the medicine for trauma survivors' needs. And yet it is the capacity for that connection that trauma robs us of. So the most powerful tool in coaching is healthy, compassionate, non-judgmental relationships with clients. Now, I want to help clients reconnect with themselves in a healthy way. And once they reconnect or even connect with themselves for the first time ever, they can begin to build those healthy relationships with others. So, trauma recovery coaches do not treat mental illness. We are trained in all the multidimensional aspects of trauma, but and we do not operate in the traditional therapeutic model where there's a power differential and symptoms are pathologized with a concentration on working on negative behaviors and beliefs. Unlike those other approaches, our model does not see a client as broken or in need of fixing. Our perspective is simply that clients are individuals who have had a normal reaction to an abnormal experience. And we believe that clients have the capacity to direct their own recovery goals when provided with the necessary support and encouragement. I do this by creating a peer level, non-judgmental, compassionate, safe space where attunement and co-regulation can exist. And I focus on helping the clients build up their strengths, healthy beliefs, and positive coping strategies to have a freedom of toxic shame, limiting beliefs, and living in those states that are either inappropriate to the stimuli. In other words, you could have a reaction that is fight or flight, because somebody said something. You're all of a sudden 500 times too reactionary with your adrenaline rushing and you're losing your thoughts because the emotions are taking over. We want to eliminate that type of reaction and get into a nice regulated space. So, a part of post-traumatic growth and making better choices and reactions, I also teach something that I call conscious wellness, which is the combination of body-based or somatic, which is means body, techniques that I teach clients to use to recognize where trauma shows up in their body and ways to release it, and then something called neuroplasticity, which is the brain's flexible rewiring capability to safely replace thought patterns that don't serve with healthier circuits lost to trauma. So you basically think differently, um, and break those patterns that don't serve you. So it's those are the that's the framework. Those are some of the steps that I use. And really, I want clients to feel safe and heard and seen, sometimes for the first time in their life. Um, and there's so much power in that. There's so much power in the most simple things, to not have your cortisol spiked because you're being told that there's something wrong with you. No, that's not how we approach this in trauma-informed practicing and coaching. There's
Oh,
nothing wrong with the people that we see. They're just having a very normal reaction to a very abnormal situation, and
wow.
we're only human, and we deserve the high road, and to be helped, and not just medicated and sent off to, clinics. And that's not always the answer. There's many times it's not the answer. If someone's actually having distressing self-harm and they are mentally challenged, well, that's another subject altogether, and there are clinicians for that type. But for the other majority of people who just don't feel seen and heard and have a voice, well, there's this modality, this trauma-informed coaching that they could try. And again, it could be combined with therapy if they so like. And I I uh, I partner with therapists to do this as well. So it's not atypical.
Rob, thank you so much for your kindness for others and the awesome service that you are offering to everyone. We have a few minutes left in the show. Please share your website, how
Sure.
the audience can get in contact with you and receive some of your wonderful services. I'm so
Uh,
grateful.
oh, thank you again, Paula. Well, I'll say lastly that my approach to coaching is the same style that I like to learn by. I need facts and hard data, but I also need hope that my life can change for the better. So I provide evidence and inspiration in an environment where my clients feel seen, heard, and cared about. And I named my new company Hope Bridge Collective because hope is so powerful, especially when we feel hopeless, and collective because we're a community united in our strength. And I want to provide the resources I wished I'd had when I was confused and suffering. And those resources are the bridge that leads to the other side of trauma and a life clients were meant for and they can love. So you could find me at www.hopebridgecollective.com, or you could email me at rob@hopebridgecollective.com to schedule a call and discover if trauma recovery coaching is right for you.
Oh, that is so amazing. Oh my gosh. Oh, and I love that name, Hope Bridge Collective, because really, it is kind of walking across a bridge, isn't it?
I
It
think so. It's
really
what
is.
I always wanted. I always yearned for that bridge, but never had it, and now I want to provide it. Yeah,
Oh my gosh. And this is going to be a bridge that is helping so many people, so many people. Oh, Rob, thank you so much. And I would love to chat later next year and do some more
I'd
and
love
talk
to.
more about trauma because it really is something that I think, it's something we all have to deal with in our lives. And this is a great gift for others, what you're doing.
And it's a great gift that you're doing as well, Paula. Thank you so much for your time and having me on your show today.
Oh, thank you so much. Everyone out there, thank you for joining us today. Love, hugs, and blessings. Rob, love, hugs, and blessings.
Thank you.